love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now waiting, better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything.
Hey everybody, this is Praxis, and in this video we're talking about the pivot. We're coming up on the pivot where things have been one way and they're going to change pretty quickly and pretty radically to something different. Back at the end of 2021, in December 2021, I made a prediction, and it was really shunned by a lot of people. If you can put yourself back in your mental headspace of 2021, people were terrified of COVID. The mass public was terrified of COVID, and people in our community were largely saying that the government was just about to open up FEMA camps and force us all to go into the FEMA camps. I came from a very different perspective back at the end of last year, and I said, I don't think that's going to be what happens. What I think is going to happen is that come spring, and certainly summer of 2022, what you're going to see is a dramatic change in tone, a dramatic change in message from the media and the politicians that, work hand in hand with the media, unfortunately. And that change in tone was going to be that COVID is not a problem. We've beaten it, mission accomplished, something along those lines, that people were going to feel like everything was okay. The only thing that ended up surprising me this year is how soon that happened. I was thinking that it was going to happen maybe at some point late in the spring, and I don't think we're even all the way through February. And the administration and the media were all saying, it's over, time to change things, lifting all these restrictions and everything. At some point over the summer, even Biden was saying, mission accomplished, we did it, the pandemic is over. They kind of wheeled that back a little bit later. But in terms of people's perception, that is exactly what happened. And there's going to be a huge change to that. And this is my prediction, and kind of 100% of my predictions tend to come true. Not because I'm super smart, but just because people's motivations, what drives people is fairly transparent, pretty obvious, and it tends to be easy to read through it. If you can get out of your own mental headspace, get out of your own concern for what may or may not happen, and look at things through, well, basically through the lens of money, it's pretty easy to figure out where people are going to be operating. So that was my prediction. It ended up coming true, and things are going to change. The reason I'd made that prediction is that people in power would want to stay in power, and the best way to do that is to tell people that everything's going great and that they should keep you on because you've done such a great job and you've completely gotten rid of the all the pandemic worries that they had. Coming up to the midterm elections, which is next week. As soon as that happens, everything that has been driving everything up until this point can be flipped on its head, and people are going to have a whole new set of motivations. The motivations leading up to this point were to keep people's jobs, and now people are going to go back to business as usual, and business as usual is business, and the business is the business of making money. Politicians are going to be serving the people that fund their campaigns, and one of the huge contributors of campaigns is the pharmaceutical industry. At the moment, the pharmaceutical industry is starting to show its true colors. I mean, for God's sakes, they never were able to hide them for anyone that had eyes. But at the beginning of the pandemic, the pharmaceutical companies were saying, we're going to make these vaccines. It's not to make a profit. It's not to make a profit. It's just because we want to help people. We might make a small profit. Well, they've made billions and billions. They've had their best years ever. And as soon as the U.S. government, I forget which organization, but it was the FDA, or I'm not sure which organization, which alphabet soup kind of group it was within the U.S. government. As soon as they said that they were going to be adding COVID vaccines to the routine childhood vaccination schedule, the very next day, it was 24 hours later, Pfizer announced, oh yeah, and by the way, we're going to be quadrupling the cost of COVID vaccines. It's about the money, and if you can't see that, you're not paying attention. So now, well, a week from now, once the election is done, it's going to be back to business as usual, and there's going to be a big tone shift. And the tone shift has really been massive. I know my mother in particular, she has really followed a lot of the COVID narrative. going through all of this. And, I've had so many conversations, loving, caring conversations. I'm sure anybody out there who's unvaccinated like myself, I'm unvaccinated. I'm sure you've had this conversation with loved ones who care about you and don't want to see anything bad happen to you. My mother was watching so much of the media hype on all this, and I had so many conversations with her, where she was saying, you really got to get vaccinated. It's the only way. Otherwise, you're, almost certainly going to die, etc. I'm exaggerating, but, we've had a lot of conversations. My mother, over this past week, has said, I think things are really doing better, and I'm feeling like I can go out and start doing a lot of things that I hadn't been doing in a while. Right now, this moment, it's the beginning of cold and flu season. There's an uptick in colds, in flus. People are not registering an uptick in COVID because people just don't care anymore and they're not reporting. But there is a slow uptick in deaths in our area from COVID, and it's... if you were concerned about COVID, now would not be the time to necessarily be like, oh yeah, now it's time to get out there. It's like, it's the beginning of things getting worse. But again, it's that media perception. The media perception is the media influence is really strong with people. And as much as it has made people, like my mother, feel like everything is fine now, 1 week from the election, totally just coincidental there. As much as it has made people who were really terrified feel completely comfortable right as we're heading into ramping up, what's going to be, the numbers are going to go up. It's cold and flu season, it's to be expected. As soon as this election is over, that is all going to flip on its head because there's money to be made. And we need to get ready for that. I don't know what the form of that is going to take. I do know that there's, as much as I know anything, I know that there is going to be a flip. Because when there are billions of dollars on the table, someone's going to take that money. That's just the way that the world works. It's not just going to be left sitting there. Someone's going to take that money, and it's just a matter of how they're going to get it. Now, there's a couple different ways that they could approach that. And I want to talk about that in this video because depending on what they do, you might want to prepare in different ways. And as a prepper, you probably want to prepare for whatever they decide to do. Now, one thing that they could do is to just start pumping up the rhetoric again, pumping up the fear again, pumping up the numbers again. And, the numbers will be on their side. We're heading into cold and flu season. The number of deaths is going to go up from COVID, just like the number of deaths from flu and every other type of communicable disease is going to go up. The numbers are going to be on their side, and they could pump that and just get people afraid all over again. That's all I really need to say about that. Just the idea, the rhetoric is going to start to come back, and any arrangements you might want to make ahead of that, to get yourself prepared for that, to start to be demonized. If you're unvaccinated, to start to be demonized, like, you're the problem, you're the one that's catching it and spreading it around, as much as it is really clear and obvious to kind of everyone in our society that I think can I say this on YouTube anymore? I mean, it's officially recognized, I think, that, the vaccines don't block the disease and they don't block people from spreading the disease once they have it. It does seem like they do reduce the chances of getting the disease. It doesn't seem like if you get the disease, they reduce your ability to spread it to other people. I think that that's common knowledge enough, and I think that's okay to say on YouTube now. I'm not sure. I'm never sure whether the truth is okay to say week to week. But whatever the popular truth is at the moment, it would seem that there's a good chance that if you are unvaccinated, you're going to be back into that camp of people to blame for the problem. And people are going to want to start selling vaccines, and they're going to need fear to do it. They're going to need demonized groups to do it, and whatever precautions you might want to take ahead of that, start thinking about that now. The other thing that you might want to take, and this is the more insidious thing, and this is the thing I don't want to think about. This is the thing I don't want to accept is possible, but having paid attention to history, it is possible. People do this type of thing all the time. It's awful to think that people could be planning to do this type of thing, but so many times throughout human history, people have done this. To think that we are past it is arrogant, I think. People are people, humans are humans. We're the same humans that we were hundreds of years ago, and all throughout history, people have done this. What is this? Well, there are two ways of scaring people. One is with an imaginary fear, pumping it up, and the other is with a real one. In the news recently, you might have been paying attention and noticing that in Boston, here in New England, and as recently as I think just 24 hours ago, as of the time of this recording, also in England, I believe in London, people are making chimeric versions of COVID, which itself is a chimera because now Just to be completely unokay to say this on YouTube, but now this is this is the mainstream view, that the most likely origin for COVID is that it came from a lab. That might be because we're supposed to hate the Chinese now, and the lab was in China, and maybe it's really hard to know what to trust. A lot of people in our community have jumped onto this as vindication, because a lot of us just thought it made sense. It's like you have a viral outbreak around a virology lab where they were studying the organism in question that broke out. It kind of made sense to us that it was at least possible. I didn't know that it was definite, but I said it, I've said it many times here on my channel, that I feel it's certainly just as possible as the idea that it came out of nature. And according to a recent U.S. Senate report, it seems like it's more possible than it coming from a natural source. So I guess COVID itself is a bit of a chimera because it was put together by people, but you have these new chimeras that have been put together in labs, one in Boston, one in London, and they are as contagious as the Omicron strains, which are, as far as I'm aware, the most contagious human pathogen that people have ever encountered. The R0 value on Omicron is higher than any other bug that we've ever seen before. So it's as contagious as that, but as lethal almost as Ebola. It is 80% lethal. Now, the studies over in Boston were pretty scant in terms of their data pool. In fact, I would say that they were too scant to really draw that kind of 80% conclusion. There were 5 mice and 4 of them died. And they're not people, they're mice, so there's that. But, we're both mammals, we're both very similar, and we both seem to respond to all the other COVIDs in a similar way. So it is, sensible to think that the death rate in humans would be kind of similar to that. These mice, I don't know that they were vaccinated or anything like that, so there's apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and all that going on. But certainly people have made a more dangerous form of it. They've done it here in New England, they've done it in England. There's been a lot of bad press around it. I bet other people are doing it in countless other areas, and there are people that are doing it purely out of egotistical research with that hubris that, it'll never happen to us, it'll never escape from our lab. I think that's tremendously arrogant, and I think that humans have had throughout time, we have had countless opportunities to learn that that is not true, that you never have ultimate control over anything, especially life systems. I know viruses aren't technically alive, but they interact with our life systems. So I think it's reasonable to think that this is happening all over the world in different labs, and some labs maybe are like, oh geez, maybe we shouldn't mention it. Now seeing the completely unexpected response, like what did the people from Boston and London think they were going to get as a response for making a monster that people have just been dealing with, but this one is like 8 million times worse. So we've got that situation going on, and we've got a pile of money sitting on the table, and pharmaceutical companies will be able to take that pile of money if people can get scared enough. One way that people can get scared is if you create a false sense of fear. And we've been seeing that, through COVID. COVID is a real thing. It's killed lots of people. It's really problematic for certain people and certain groups. I don't want to diminish that at all because that would be disingenuous. It'd be dishonest. It'd be unrealistic to say that COVID is not a real problem for some people. But I think it is fair to say that the general danger to the general population was extremely overblown. And that's one way to get people fearful. That's one way to drive people to do things that you want to do, like give you money for vaccines that you just pumped up in cost by quadrupling the price of them. Another way is to have an actual real thing that people sensibly should be afraid of. And one way to do that is to release one of these viruses from the lab. And that's a horrible, horrible thing to do. And I think that it is fair to say that the researchers that were conducting the studies that we have heard of would never in their life want to see that happen. And I think a lot of people that are doing similar studies that are at this point maybe not wanting to publicize them because of the completely unexpected bad press that came up from the other people that had published similar studies. I believe that the vast majority of people are good people that want to do good, that want to see themselves as good people, but not everyone in the world is like that. And it only takes a couple of people to kind of taint the whole pool. There are billions and billions of people on this earth, and not all of those billions of people have the capability to recreate this kind of gain of function research. I know that the labs aren't calling it gain of function research. they're making the virus gain a function, but it definitely isn't gain a function research because that's got bad press. It's kind of like NutraSweet was like a bad name, so they renamed it aspartame, and then they renamed it something else after that. So most people on this planet would never want to see that happen. But I think there's plenty that wouldn't mind it, and there are sociopaths out there that only care about their own wealth, their own power, and it's a really concerning time right now because there is a tremendous financial incentive for pharmaceutical companies to be in a position where there is a real danger that people are legitimately afraid of, an 80% kill rate virus. And I think that that's something that we need to prepare ourselves for because there is an awful lot of money to be made if our population can be put back into a position where they are afraid again. And I think it would be more difficult than it was the first time to do it strictly through inflating false fears into big things that are larger than they deserve to be. And I'm concerned about that. Again, I don't like to think that any human would entertain that idea, but you look through history and you see that there are plenty of humans who will. The vast majority of us, no. But it only takes one. It only takes one group of people to do something like that, and then it's released into the world. These are things the size of the tip of my finger. You could put enough on the size of the tip of my finger to tip our world for decades and decades to come. It doesn't take much. And that has me concerned. And if this is something that you're thinking about, it should have you concerned, and you should start thinking about what you want to do. COVID, as we've seen it over the past couple of years, a lot of us looked at it as kind of like a dry run. During the beginning, I was really, really cautious with it. And I've been way more cautious than most people over the entire period. That's why, myself and my family, we've never got COVID. We're going on a COVID zero policy here in our family. I think COVID zero for a family is manageable. For a country, I think it's crazy. I'm not really sure what China is doing. Although what China is doing is cause for concern for me too, because especially now that it is officially okay for me to say here that it looks like the Chinese created this virus. The Chinese will know more about this virus than anybody else. And why has China taken a different approach to managing the virus? Do they know something that the rest of us don't know? Or are they just really stupid? I don't think the Chinese are stupid. I don't like to think that they know something about the virus that the rest of us don't, but it's a mystery, and it's a concerning mystery. So I'm planning to continue with keeping precautions, hold off, wait and see. That works really well in life. I think that that's worked really well for the idea of all of the controversies around COVID. When people were saying, do the vaccines work? Do they not work? Will they prevent disease? Will they not prevent disease? I was kind of like, well, let's wait and see. Some people were just adamant the vaccines won't work. Some people were adamant the vaccines definitely are going to work. I say wait and see. We wait and see, and then we find out. The same thing with the side effects and things like that. Some people were saying the vaccines are 100% safe for everybody. Some people were saying the vaccines are poison, whatever. I said, hey, wait and see. And if you recall, the FDA has actually changed their guidance for different vaccines on different groups. At the beginning they were saying, like all the vaccines, let's just get them out into people. And then over time they were saying, well, actually this group probably shouldn't take this vaccine. Wait and see is a really great way to go about things. So let's get ourselves into a position where we can wait and see. And the way that you can wait and see is by, doing your basic, boring kind of prep work. Get yourself set up with your food, get yourself set up with your respirators, all that kind of stuff. Get ready. The first run, a lot of us saw it as kind of a dry run. After the beginning, when it became kind of clear that, it wasn't airborne Ebola or something like that, a lot of us, myself included, we're thinking, well, this isn't the pandemic that we were preparing for, but it's an awfully good dry run to kind of test out to see how well we can do. Do my protocols prevent me from getting this thing? I know that the vast majority of preppers that I know, their protocols didn't work. They ended up catching it over time. And that's, I don't say that to, criticize them or whatever. That's a great learning opportunity. Whatever they were doing, they needed to do something different. And I know that there's a degree of luck to all this stuff too. You can't say, you got it, I didn't, that must mean whatever I'm doing is superior. There is that degree of luck that goes into the whole thing. So you can't draw any hard and fast conclusions, but it was a great testing ground for us to kind of feel what worked, what didn't work, and we may really need that education over the next couple of years if the pharmaceutical industry realizes the best way to sell more and more of these vaccines that they're having more and more difficulty selling is to create a real fear. Again, I'm going to say it over and over and over again because I really feel it. I think it is horrible to think that that is possible, but I think it is horribly unlikely and horribly Pollyannish to believe that it isn't, because look at history. People do this type of thing all the time, over and over. Not everybody, but a small group of people are always interested in wealth and power and control, and they're willing to do pretty much anything to get it. So start taking your precautions now. Think about what you learned over the past couple of years and get ready for the potential of us having a real pandemic over the next couple of years. I really hope I'm wrong about that. I hope they get the money some other way. They're going to get the money some way. But I hope that, I hope our population is dumb enough that they can just do it by convincing them to be afraid of unreal things than having to make a real one. That's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think is the most likely outcome of all of this? There is a lot of money at stake. When there's that much money sitting there, I think someone's going to go after it. Do you think I'm right on that? Do you think I'm wrong on that? If people are going to go after that money, what do you think is the most likely way that they're going to do it? That's it. Thanks for watching. This episode has been brought to you in part by Prescott Caliber Club and Jeske Defense Strategies. Prescott Caliber Club is a federally licensed firearm manufacturer and retail store specializing in firearms, survival gear, and producing great online content. If you want to thank them for supporting this channel, go check them out at PrescottCalClub.com. Please subscribe and tune in every week for new videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so through Patreon or PayPal.